Okay, it is Friday, November 28th, Black Friday in the United States. It's the day after Thanksgiving, and it's known as Black Friday because of shopping sales and that sort of thing, but it's going to feel a little bit different in Ukraine. So let's look at this. There's a big shakeup right now. I have 7 stories. 2 are really important. The first one is the shakeup with Andriy Yermak. Christopher Miller this morning, I woke up to this. He's from the Financial Times. I have confirmed with my sources here in Kyiv that searches are now underway this morning by Ukraine's National Anti-Corruption Bureau and Special Anti-Corruption Prosecutor's Office at the home, not the office, not Zelensky's office, but at the home of Andriy Yermak. And so we saw this picture. Of course, this was then taken by the same picture, taken and used by Kirill Dmitriev. Ukraine anti-corruption authorities are reportedly currently searching the offices of Andriy Yermak, head of Zelensky's administration and Ukraine's chief negotiator with the U.S., according to Ukrainian media. And of course, they're going to spin this in the worst possible way that they can. So here's what's going on. He resigned without being charged of anything. But as we look into it, this is Euromaidan Press. Here's the article. I want to highlight a few paragraphs. Ukrainian Pravda reported later, citing sources, that presidential office head Andriy Yermak is identified as Alibaba in the Nabu recordings. They all had like these code names. Like I'm trying to remember whose code names were what, but his name was Alibaba. MP Yaroslav Zenchelyak also confirmed this. The heads of the Specialized Anti-Corruption Prosecutor's Office earlier confirmed the existence of a suspect with this code name in the recordings. Klemenko said earlier in November that Alibaba is, quote, this is a quote now, Alibaba is holding meetings and assigning tasks to law enforcement agencies to ensure that they persecute NABU detectives and anti-corruption prosecutors, unquote. According to the MP, he may also be behind the attempts to eliminate the independence of NABU and SAPO back in July. If that is the case, that is very problematic, and it's a good thing that he's gone. Yermak has been controversial in his position as head of the president's office. Zelensky has refused to dismiss Yermak until now. They go back, they're friends from back in childhood. Yermak helped Zelensky rise in his film career, and Vartel 95 or Quarter 95 is what that translates to, even if I mispronounce the Ukrainian term. Yermak later confirmed that the searches on his Telegram channel were actually happening. Quote, today, Nabu and Sapo are indeed conducting procedural actions at my home. The investigators faced no obstacles. They were given full access to the apartment. My lawyers are on site and are interacting with law enforcement. I am fully cooperating. Okay, last little bit down here. Ukrainian Pravda reported that David Arkhamia, the head of the Servant of the People parliamentary faction, has joined calls for presidential office reform and Yermak's replacement. So it looks like he's stepping out voluntarily, but it also looks like maybe he was involved in something shady, but that's not the same. So we don't know exactly what he might have been involved in. And to speculate is, we're going to see some speculation. So I'm not going to speculate one way or the other, but it looks like there might have been some problems there. Okay, Zelensky officially dismissed Andriy Yermak as head of the presidential office. Ukraine prepares for high-level U.S. talks with top military, security, and diplomatic officials representing Kyiv. A government reshuffle is on the table, with all ministers to be assessed for their ability to meet demands of war and winter. And that's exactly what I'm talking about. There's going to be a shakeup, and just like musical chairs. And so the current prime minister is probably going to go over to the head of the president's office, and the head of the digital transformation may become prime minister, and so on and so forth. Okay, so, but we'll talk about that in just a moment. Russia is eager, says Zelensky, for Ukraine to make mistakes. They really are, and this is a very dangerous time for Ukraine. We won't make any. Our work goes on. Our struggle goes on. We have no right to fall short, no right to retreat or turn on one another. If we lose our unity, we risk losing everything. And this is precisely why Zelensky had to dismiss Yermak and be done with this right now. It's too perilous. You can't like sacrifice the whole for this one person. Sources in Ukraine suggest more leadership changes. It looks like Servadenko, who's the new prime minister, who only has been prime minister for a few months, is likely to become the head of the presidential office, while Mikhailo Fedorov is expected to take over as prime minister. Fedorov has done an outstanding job with digital transformation in Ukraine. I don't know that translates to necessarily becoming a good prime minister, but he seems like a competent guy from everything I can see. There's more shakeups expected in Ukraine's leadership. Vice Prime Minister for Reconstruction, Kuleba, Oleksiy Kuleba, may soon be dismissed. Regional changes are also on the horizon. That would be like governors of various oblasts. Now, what's Russia doing with this? Well, they're going to make as much hay as they can while the sun shines. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov claims that the growing corruption scandal in Ukraine is shaking the country's political system and will have very negative consequences for Ukraine. Well, of course, and he's hoping that it's going to. Dmitry Medvedev said the corrupt government surrounding the expired Kyiv clown has crumbled. He may still be sitting in his office spewing cocaine from his nose, but he won't be the one who signs the peace treaty. The buffoon is illegitimate. The collapse of his system is inevitable. Of course, Dmitry Medvedev says nonsense like this almost every day, so you might be able to discount him. Kirill Dmitriev says, well, he's referring to Tucker Carlson, who was saying for months the Wall Street Journal has held a story detailing the personal corruption of Andriy Yermak, the second most powerful man in Ukraine. Yermak has skimmed hundreds of millions in American tax dollars meant for Ukraine aid. I hope that's not the case. I don't know if it is or is not the case. If it is the case, that's really dangerous for international relations. But again, I don't know, because people just talk way outside of what they actually know. Kirill Dmitriev responded. Tucker Carlson mentioned before that the Wall Street Journal was aware of Yermak's corruption, but held the story for months for political reasons. Okay, well, we just don't know what things will come out, and we'll see what comes out. But we know that he's gone. He's resigned. Mike Flynn puts this out. He's a general that was removed for his post for lying about having spoken to the Russians early on, lying to Vice President Pence about this particularly. General Mike Flynn says the loser in chief, Zelensky, this is a great way to start this. I mean, if you're going to try to be at least have some semblance of balance, you don't want to do that. Loser in chief Zelensky, along with his corrupt inner circle, all need to be arrested. A legitimate investigation needs to be done on the years of waste, fraud, and abuse, and the tens of billions of dollars stolen must be recovered. It's completely useless war started by totally corrupt globalists. Okay, so you can safely discount this commentary to some degree, because we don't know that there are tens of billions of dollars stolen. What we like, he's saying that, asserting it as if it's true. Perhaps it's true, and if it's true, it's shameful and it needs to be addressed, but we don't know that. And a war started by totally corrupt globalists. Unless you're speaking of Putin being a globalist, that this is not, the West didn't start the war. Like, that's what he's trying to assert. Okay. Donald Tusk of Poland, called Yermak's resignation a political crisis. It kind of is. Orban is visiting Putin. Naraki is visiting Orban. Chaos in negotiations over the Witkoff plan, and political crisis in Kyiv. A fatal combination, warns Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk. It's a very dangerous time. It sincerely is. The EU reacted to Yermak searches. Anti-corruption bodies in Ukraine actually exist and are doing their job. Yeah, that's how it works. You won't find that in Russia so much. EU Commission's Mercier says fighting corruption is a key element for the country's ascension to the EU. Well, they need to fight corruption. Finding it is, yeah, it's painful. It just is. Garry Kasparov is responding to this comment. The comment was, in Ukraine, people resign after being suspected of corruption. In Russia, you lead the state with corruption as a tool, like in Hungary. And Kasparov replies, the difference between parts of a system being corrupt and corruption being the system. In functional democracies, you find out crime is called crime, and there are consequences. In authoritarian states, everything is opaque, and the only crime is disloyalty to the leader. That's the difference. Representative Don Bacon in the United States says independent law enforcement and judiciary is working in Ukraine. This doesn't happen in Russia. There, you get thrown out of a high-rise window. Yeah, that's right. Okay, Putin, next big story. Putin and Orban are meeting, and they're frankly talk about anything and solve any problems, including Ukraine, says Putin. Hungary and Serbia are about to sign an agreement to build a new oil pipeline, and that way they can get the Russian oil to Serbia and from Serbia into Hungary, and easy peasy, it's all fixed, and then they can stay on the sweet Russian oil. Here's Putin talking to Orban. Let's see what they had to say. Thank you for responding positively, says Putin, to the possible meeting with me and with the President of the United States in your country. This was Donald's proposal. He must immediately said, we have good relations with Hungary. Both you with Viktor as well as do I as well. Therefore, I suggest this option, and we gladly accepted it. If during our negotiations, we will reach to the point of Budapest as a location, I will also be very pleased. And I would like to express my gratitude. Okay, so he's saying, hey, Budapest, that sounds like a great place to have this. It sounds so weird when you think about the Budapest Memorandum, where the U.S., EU, and Russia agreed never to violate Ukraine's borders, and this is where they want to have the peace agreement. Just sounds so wrong. Okay, at any rate, PM Orban told Putin that Hungary was suffering huge economic losses because of the war and suggested Budapest as the location for peace negotiations. Okay, next story. An oil tanker exploded in the Black Sea north of the Bosphorus Strait. It was probably a tanker of the Russian Shadow Fleet. There are reports that it's under EU and U.S. sanctions. It flies under the flag, or sails under the flag of Gambia without any cargo. 25 crew members on board are alive. Rescue ships have been sent to the site because damage to the vessel may lead to its sinking. This explosion and fire broke out in the engine room of this tanker in the Black Sea. It's to the north of Turkey's Bosphorus Strait. The tanker Kairos sailed unloaded toward the Russian port of Novorossiysk. It experienced a fire caused by an external influence. That's what they say. So we can't tell which it is. One article says external influence. Another says something in the boiler room. Okay, about 28 miles off the Turkish coast. Now, then we also see this. There's footage of this ICBM missile. It went up in the air, and then it turned around, and now it's going down. This was a Russian ICBM test. Footage of the Russian ICBM test literally going upside down at the Yasny missile range today, which is perhaps positive in the sense that we won't have to hear Putin bragging about how he has the best ICBMs and there's no analog to it in the world that is as dreamy as his ICBMs, which he does every month or couple months or so. Okay, the U.S. is reportedly ready to recognize Russia's control over Crimea. This is a terrible story, and occupied Ukrainian regions to push its peace deal. Witkoff and Kushner are in Moscow with the offer, it appears. Now, we're not 100% that this is actually what's happening, but it seems like that's the direction that things are going. If it's true, the U.S. is willing to allow borders to be redrawn by force and let aggressors be rewarded. And then the gates of heck are about to be opened. This may prove to be the single most destabilizing and conflict-spawning decision of the 21st century, a truly Black Friday. So if it is true that Trump is just like, sure, we will allow the rule of law to be violated, international rule of law to be thwarted completely, you can just do it, overthrow whatever border you want, and, you know, as long as you can do it, you can do it. I don't think Trump thinks in these kinds of terms. And he thinks in terms of, well, it's already done. Putin already has it. How are they going to dislodge him? And he moves on. I saw this cartoon and it made me think, oh, yeah, this kind of looks like it. Give me what I want, says Putin as he's on top of Zelensky. Trump rushes over, says, stop. There's a better way. And then Trump is on top of Zelensky saying, give him what he wants. Unfortunately, this looks like what's transpiring. Zelensky did not sign Trump's Thanksgiving peace plan. Kyiv will not give up territory. The deadline was yesterday. That was Thanksgiving in the United States. Ukrainian president did not sign any document, and he will not sign one if it requires giving up territory, as this explicitly is forbidden by the Constitution, reminded presidential office head Andriy Yermak. Well, Yermak's now out. But Yermak stressed that no sane person would sign away Ukraine's land. As long as Zelensky's president, no one should expect us to give up territory. Yermak said in this interview with The Atlantic. But of course, you know what happened to Yermak. Back to this, Washington has classified, like for your eyes, for certain eyes only, classified the new peace plan for Ukraine. Even the EU has no idea what's in the document. Politico reports this updated version of the peace plan for Ukraine is being kept secret even from European officials. This is an unprecedented situation from a diplomatic standpoint. None of us has information, the outlet source said. It's just, I've never seen that before. Meanwhile, Witkoff is visiting Moscow. That trip for Witkoff and Jared Kushner to visit Putin is still on track, and that's where we are today. A couple last things. My shout out to Christian, a graduate student, YouTube member. Thank you, Christian, for your support. I appreciate it. I want to remind you that it's been 365 days now since the people of Georgia started protesting, and they're out there every day. 365 days in a row. Last couple things. Putin yesterday proposed to formally declare that Russia has no intention of attacking Europe. And here are some other promises that he's made over the last 25 years. Not to rewrite the Constitution for himself, not to seize Crimea, not to pursue, to pursue a peaceful foreign policy, not to raise the retirement age as long as he's president. That decision will never happen, and so on and so forth. Right? Okay. So you can sure believe him now. Last little bit by Darth Putin. Having a peace summit in Budapest would be perfect. That's where we promised we would never invade in the first place. All right, my friends, that's all that I have. Thank you for your time, the likes, the shares, and the subscribes. Tell me what you thought about what you saw in the comments below, and thank you for being the kind of person who cares about Ukraine.